All right, welcome back to the Young Turks coverage of the RNC. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian. As you can tell, Mayor Rudy Giuliani joins us. All right, Mayor, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Okay, so Mayor, we had a good conversation on your show a minute ago, and appreciated it. Obviously, I'm going to ask you some tough questions. You know that.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna believe that.
Okay, so
I didn't know that.
so let me start with this. So you've been incredibly loyal to Donald Trump. There's no question about that. I mean, as loyal gets.
It's true.
Right.
I'd say that's right.
Yeah. But he didn't find a role for you in his administration last time. Do you have a speaking spot here or no?
No.
No. So what's going on?
I spoke at the last 5 conventions, and I was the keynote speaker to it.
Yeah. No, I remember. So do you feel that loyalty has not been returned or has been returned? What's your take on it?
I have, since he's been out of office, spoken to him twice a week, almost constantly. Had dinner and lunch with him 50 times, 40 times, 30 times. My son is his constant golf partner when he wants to win, and I'm his golf partner when he wants to lose.
Ooh, shots fired.
No. When he wants to slum. When he calls me to play golf, I say, you must not want to win today. But no, I've maintained a very close friendship with him. And I was his lawyer during much of that administration. Now, I turned down the job that he offered in the administration. He turned down the job of Attorney General. He's very vocal about that and has said that. I didn't feel that I could be the Attorney General. I felt like there would be clearly issues that had come up from the prior campaign. I was maybe his 4th or 5th highest advisor, and I'd have to recuse myself. I kind of anticipated what I think Sessions didn't anticipate.
So he wanted you. He wanted you to be the
first
attorney
choice for Attorney General.
in the first administration, or if
First
he gets.
administration.
Oh, I see.
Immediately.
Okay.
I mean, immediately he offered it to me the day after, and I said, I want to be. Well, I'm pretty stubborn too. I wanted to be Secretary of State, and I don't think the president and most people would see me as a Secretary of State, but I did, because I had spent, from the time I left being mayor until then, I had been on 90 foreign trips in 70 foreign countries. I ran a worldwide security business, and every one of my trips I used, not every one, many of my trips I used to have access to the head of state, the chief security people, and I really got to know them. And my great interest, believe it or not, has always been foreign policy, even though I never thought I'd be a mayor. I thought either I'd be a lawyer all my life, or if I ran for office, it would be about foreign policy. I changed from Republican to Democrat. I mean, or Democrat to Republican because of foreign policy.
So what would your priorities be in foreign policy, considering the current geopolitical, makeup situation?
I'm a pure Reaganite. Ronald Reagan is unabashedly my hero.
So you'd fund the Contras.
I worked for him for 8 years. 2 as his number 2 person in the Justice Department. 6 in New York. I remained close to him even when I was in New York. He personally asked me to argue 3 or 4 different cases. And then I was on the board of the Reagan Library until a few years ago, until Mrs. Reagan died. And I would say very, very close to her. I'd see her once a month. I delivered many lectures at the library.
But that's interesting. I mean, that's a great question by Anna, because I'm not sure that Reagan's foreign policy matches Trump's.
It doesn't. I mean, I mean, the major difference I have with the president is I would, without any embarrassment, say I'm much more of a hardliner than he is.
So more war?
And he's more. I wouldn't say he's an isolationist, but he's more open to that way of thinking. I'm very, very devoted to the idea, because I saw it defeat at least a good deal of communism. A very, very strong America is a very well protected America, and somehow I think he actually believes that. But he will talk more like an isolationist. If push came to shove, I'm not sure, and that's why I think he prevented things that Biden couldn't prevent.
So,
For example, Putin. I think we can agree on this. And however it turns out, it turns out. Putin invaded 3 times in the last 4 presidencies. He invaded under Bush when Bush was weak. He invaded under Obama when I think Obama made it clear he was weak, particularly in Syria, with the red lines, and Putin had to come in. And he invaded Afghanistan when he was perfectly sure that Biden would do nothing. He even played him for 2 months by getting him to say over and over again, to the point of embarrassment, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground, no boots on the ground. And finally, if you do a little invasion, that'll be okay.
First of all, you mean Ukraine, not Afghanistan.
What did I say?
Afghanistan, yeah.
What I meant to say was the exit in Afghanistan triggered Putin to say, I got another one I can take advantage of. I do not think Ukraine would have happened under Trump or a president that gave Putin pause to think something could be done, something could happen.
I have to follow up on this because, you kind of brushed aside this notion of no boots on the ground. You think that kind of comes across as weak, but how do you reconcile your desire for boots on the ground with what's currently going on with the Republican electorate? Because there is a growing faction of the Republican electorate,
no doubt about it,
that does not want to engage in more war. They don't want to send more foreign aid or military aid to other countries, including our allies, obviously. So how do you reconcile that? Do you feel like you're kind of out of style with the growing, faction that I'm talking about?
I think it's a little bit, yes. A little bit, yes. And maybe they didn't grow up like I did during the Cold War with threat of nuclear war and a really deep knowledge of communism. I was a political science and philosophy major in college, and I studied communism because I felt I had to know it. I think we have a bunch of young people that are totally unaware of all those risks of the Marxian plan, the Marxist plan, the fact that the only way you deter it is by a very strong military. Even though you say, I really wouldn't like boots on the ground. I think that if they're worried that you are going to put boots on the ground, there's less of a chance you're eventually going to have to do it.
So let me follow up.
It's a psychological game that you're playing. You never want your adversary to know what you're going to do.
Right.
But let me follow up in 2 different ways here. So number one, you say you're worried about Marxist, communists, et cetera. But the most prominent Marxist communist in the world right now is Kim Jong-un, an actual bona fide old school communist dictator, okay? So now mainly communists would say he's just a dictator, but you certainly would call him a communist and et cetera. But yes, now Trump was not tough on him. They exchanged what Trump called love letters, right?
Yeah.
And he said they fell in love. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un did develop 6 to 8 nuclear weapons. So was Trump way too soft on Kim Jong-un?
I think he played him like a fiddle.
How so? He has the nukes.
Yeah, but he first of all, he may or may not have been doing substantial development during that period of time, but he was certainly much less active then.
The missile tests were lessened.
Oh my
to
gosh,
be fair, but
toward the end of Obama, he was virtually almost hitting Japan. He was flying nukes over Japan. At the very beginning of Trump, he did that, and then he stopped. And I think there was a chance that Trump could engage him in a sensible dialogue. But you might find this hard to believe, but I think that Kim Jong-un sees Trump as like an uncle or a father figure. And
that doesn't disturb you. Wait, hold on. That doesn't disturb you as a former communist fighter? That Trump, the biggest communist dictator in the world, views Trump as an uncle?
But he'll play him. He'll use that to play him.
But how did he play him when he developed 6 to 8 nukes?
I'm not sure he developed those all under Trump. I think he
had not. And the reason why he was doing those,
his act of developing has increased way more under Biden, and certainly his militaristic activity has changed markedly since Biden has come into office.
No, I think that the reason he was doing all those tests was because Obama wasn't allowing him to develop nukes, and he was giving him strong threats. And under Trump, he's like, well, nobody's at home. I could just develop any nukes I like, so I don't have to bother with theatrics.
I don't believe he developed those. I would have to check on it, and
well, everybody can check it.
Be sure of it. But I did feel that Trump had him in a good position to move him toward maybe thinking more generally about his position in history, what's going on with his country. I thought there was a real opportunity for Trump to influence him. I actually think there would have been a real opportunity for Trump to influence Putin and create the separation from China that we desperately needed and hadn't happened yet if they hadn't done the phony Russian collusion thing, which is the reason it brought me closer to Trump, because I knew without any doubt from the very beginning that it was completely phony. I didn't know that Hillary paid for it. If I had known that Hillary paid for it, I'd have been even stronger.
I thought a Republican candidate originally had paid for it in the primary in 2016. The Steele dossier.
But she's the one who, through the law firm, made the laundered payment to Steele.
A Republican started it in the first place,
but she put the 1.1 million in.
Yeah. So look, the Steele dossier is discredited, so it does. We're past it.
The 1.1 million we can prove. I believe, but only believe and can't prove that that a lot more money was paid. But the 1.1 million comes from her, and it's the same kind of laundered payment that they are trying to impose liability on Trump in New York.
Yeah,
it's a payment. It's an illegal payment to a foreign entity that was concealed as a legal payment.
So I want to come back to that because look. So first of all, the Republicans started it, no question about it. Everybody can check that. We'll check the 1.1 million, et cetera.
I don't disagree that it was a Republican who was trying to develop that against Trump. They picked it up.
Okay, so we agreed on that portion.
And they decided that Manafort would be the best fall guy. And they made a fatal mistake with Manafort because they thought Manafort was very close to Putin. I don't think I ever met Putin. Manafort was very close to the Ukrainian, Russian-oriented oligarchs who were close to Putin. But he himself was never close to Putin.
So that brings us back to Ukraine. So Trump keeps saying, and you seem to back it up a little bit a little while ago, that if Trump is in charge, that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine because Trump is so strong. But what does that mean? Does that mean that Putin thinks that Trump would have put boots on the ground? Trump would have bombed him? Trump would have nuked him? What does it mean that he's strong?
Does Putin think that he's going to put boots on the ground? Putin's not sure. You don't have to create.
Yeah, Trump's a wild card. Like you don't know what he's going to do, and I think that's where his strength comes in, right?
An off-the-cuff just sort of thought.
Please.
Okay. Putin might say, this guy's ego is so great. If I show him up like that, oh my God, I may have a nuclear war. That is an enormously valuable asset to have in foreign policy. Reagan had that. If you talk to Russians now who went through the Cold War on their side, they would tell you they thought Ronald Reagan was completely crazy and was dying to bomb them. That's the impression Mayor, he wanted to create. He had no such desire.
But Mayor Giuliani, do you see that if you threaten that, you're either bluffing, which could be disastrous if he goes in, because then your bluff is called and then you're toast, or you have to follow through and actually nuke Russia and start World War III?
You have to nuke Russia. You had to attack them. I mean, in some way.
Attacking Russia would be a big deal, and that would require boots on the ground.
And how does that square with his anti-war stance?
It doesn't. Everything doesn't have to square. If you particularly if you think of him as just think of all the money and time that's been put into making him appear to be an irrational figure. So if he really is an irrational figure, yeah, he's against war. He doesn't want war, but he takes this personally. He takes it personally that you have shown him up. I think Putin, who doesn't want nuclear war, wouldn't take that risk, and he didn't. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? The guy likes to attack. He did it under Bush. He did it under Obama. He did it under Biden. One time he didn't is when I think this great president that was there, and you think his nut was there, but he didn't attack.
Question for you. I want to follow up on that.
And if I'm right, those Ukrainians are only dead because we selected Biden.
So if Trump gets elected, which it's looking pretty good for him right now, right? So if he gets elected, he comes in, what do you think he should do to change course on the war in Ukraine? What do you think he would need to do?
I really don't want to put out too many possibilities because they kind of get locked in. Or maybe if I raise questions, it's better. If I say something like, what would constitute, I mean, to settle something, you have to give both sides a victory. If you're a really good deal maker, I don't know if they're ready for that. I think Putin maybe. I think it's getting a lot more expensive than you think. I think it's creating many more internal problems in Russia than we recognize. I don't know about Ukraine. I used to know Ukraine well, but have been cut off from it since all of the problems there. I don't know Zelensky at all. He was not a player there when I was in Ukraine for 5 or 6 years. I don't trust Zelensky completely because of his connection to Kolomoisky, who was the head of Privat Bank, which is the biggest money laundering institution in that area of the world. Latvia uses it, Lithuania uses it. I have in my possession a money laundering transaction in August of 2016 that goes to Hunter Biden and his company.
Did you let James Comer know about that?
What?
Did you let James Comer know about that?
Yeah, head of the House Oversight Committee. How come he didn't use it to go after Biden then?
I have no idea, and neither did the Justice Department when I gave it to them. I gave it to Pence. I gave it to them. A lot of things that I gave to people whenever evidence that I gave to the U.S. Attorney in Washington about the murder of Ashley Babbitt has never been used. My testimony before the J6 committee has been destroyed, I think. I don't think they want you to hear my testimony. So
who do you think might have destroyed it? Are you saying that there's a cover-up?
How do you destroy testimony before a committee in which you put people in jail if they don't show up? But the whole thing is like a surreal experience.
But Mayor, can you see that given that you had Ukrainian partners, they wound up getting convicted here in America. Even the people who would most want to use the evidence you claim you have, like Comer, he's dying. He's got no evidence against connecting Hunter and Joe. So why wouldn't they use it? Does it? I mean, it's got to occur to you that they might think that it's not reliable.
Maybe they're frightened by the false information. I never had partners in Ukraine. The 2 men that were in Ukraine were never my partners.
Bobolinsky and stuff like that?
No, you're thinking of Uygur and his other partner. I used them to gather information there on the theory that they claimed to be very big Trump supporters. One was and one wasn't. And one of them then said we were partners. Well, there's no proof that we were, and the other one contradicted us. We were never partners. I would never have done business in Ukraine when I was investigating for President Trump, and there's never been any evidence of that. But they have convinced people of that. They also tried to convince people, and for 16 months it was just written all the time that I was a Russian agent with the hard drive.
But they did get convicted.
I'm suing. They got convicted of making illegal campaign contributions to Pete Sessions. Had nothing to do with me.
But that leads to
I got to tell you, this is very hard for you to believe. I don't commit crimes. I was a U.S. attorney for too damn long. I'm too honest. I don't commit crimes. I'm not stupid.
So, but we do have Donald Trump hiring Paul Manafort, who you said earlier, big problem, right? Connected to the Ukrainian-Russian oligarchs. You got the folks that you worked with convicted. Now you got Steve Bannon, who ran the fake wall. Yeah, fake wall scheme. His partners go to jail. He's still facing charges in New York. Donald Trump has fired almost everyone that's worked for him in the previous administration. This starts to pile up where people think, wait, is Donald Trump have any competence at all? You see what I'm saying? As you see all these people going to jail, and you say they should. You say Manafort is wrong. You say your former partners were rightfully convicted. So at least on those 3 for sure, let alone all the people he fired and he's saying is terrible. Isn't he a terrible manager then?
No, he's a terrific manager. Look at the results that he got. I mean, first let me answer each one of those. Okay. My 2 former partners weren't my former partners. They just help me, and they are different. One of them was a lot more dishonest than the other, and it was all personal dishonesty, having nothing to do with Trump, nothing to do with me, having to do with campaign contributions to 2 campaigns that happened before I met them and before they met Trump. The situation with Steve, the one for which he's convicted, is an assertion of executive privilege, for which nobody goes to jail except Steve Bannon.
But you know it's absurd. He didn't have executive privilege.
I mean,
you know he doesn't.
He wasn't.
Rudy, you're a lawyer. You were a really good lawyer earlier in your career. You know he doesn't have executive privilege.
No, I don't.
He wasn't in office. Trump wasn't in office. He hadn't worked for the White House in 3 years. How is that executive privilege?
It's not as strong a case of executive privilege, but a president can bring an advisor in, and by sharing information with them, make them effectively someone who's a quasi-government official. And that's at least an argument that's got to get resolved by a higher court, which it wasn't. And okay, even assuming that, isn't Garland holding back the video considerably more serious than that? When right now we're all debating, is Biden wacko? Okay. Why are the American people deprived of 6 hours of him being questioned by a professional prosecutor who came to a kind of a generous conclusion that he's a nice old man who's lost his memory? I happen to think he acted like someone that would convince the American people, even more than the debate did, that he is suffering from a serious case of dementia and shouldn't be within 10,000 miles of the White House.
Look, I know that
and Garland is illegally, contemptuously withholding it to cover it up. That is more serious to me, because that man shouldn't have his finger near the button for one more day, except for the fact that Garland is covering it up.
So Rudy, look, I feel like, I love that you just admitted something. You don't realize you admitted something, but releasing her Biden testimony, obviously Republicans wanted to use it for campaigning purposes. If her says that, leave him alone, he's old, feeble, all of that. That gave you guys a clue that this is going to be damning video that you guys could use to campaign against him. What I'm trying to say is take the win. Take the win. Like Biden's losing.
I don't think you're going to believe this when I tell you this. I don't look at everything for campaign purposes. You see the face? See the face?
Rudy.
I actually worry about my country.
I worry about my country too.
And I really have.
But I don't think Republicans wanted to release.
I think Republicans, I had this conversation. I think Republicans want Biden to be on the ticket.
Of course they do.
I don't.
Yes. But they wanted to use the testimony for their campaigning against Biden because of the fact that
her testimony.
My main reason, I would like to use it for both. I'd like to use it, number one, to get him out of the presidency. And then if we can't get him out of the presidency, to defeat him. But the man, we're getting toward the end now, but the man shouldn't be president. He does damage. A person with that disease, which is an extraordinarily serious disease.
Which disease?
Dementia. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have no doubt he has dementia. I did a podcast 4 years ago with 2 doctors who looked at 10 years of his videos. One of them said he had one came to a more serious conclusion than the other. And they pointed out things that then you could see. For example, they would say he has a condition that indicates very serious dementia. He lost a short-term memory, but not everybody has immediate short-term memory loss. He forgets what he's saying in the middle of a sentence.
Yeah. So look, we don't need the 10 doctors. We all agree.
We all agree. Yeah.
You shouldn't be president if you forget what you're saying in the middle of a sentence.
Right. I also think you shouldn't be president if you're crazy, and I think Donald Trump's a little bit crazy. And you're saying, well, he's crazy, but we're using it for strategy to threaten to other countries and stuff. But I'm a little unnerved that he actually is crazy.
It was crazy also, but the idea that you convince your adversary that you're very tough and maybe unpredictable is a very, very valuable thing to protect your country.
Unless you're actually crazy. That's the problem.
I know him for, 35 to 40 years. He is not actually crazy. He's actually a very nice man. I mean,
well, he's nice to you. He's nice to people he likes. He's not so nice to people he's calling criminals and rapists and on and on and on, right? And people from other races and genders, etc.
Let's talk about Trump's niceness real quick, because those surrounding Trump have faced legal issues. It's funny because Trump's the luckiest man on the planet because he somehow miraculously skirts any responsibility for the same cases and the same issues that those surrounding him have literally served time in prison for. You yourself have been found guilty of defamation.
Not prison, though, thank God.
Not prison.
Who knows? They want to put me in jail for the rest of my life.
Well, I mean, look, you now have this legal obligation to pay the 2 election workers out of Georgia that you were found.
It's determined on appeal.
So you are going to appeal it?
Oh, damn
Is
right
that
I'm
why
gonna
you
appeal it. That's why
came out of bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy court wouldn't let me appeal it until I did things that they wanted me to do. And I said, you don't have a right to prevent my appeal. I believe, I can't talk about it very much, but I believe that was probably one of the most unjust proceedings in a court that ever existed. It would have made the case that Merchan conducted for Trump look fair. I wasn't allowed, I wouldn't even go through it. I wasn't allowed to testify. I wasn't allowed to give a defense. I was never actually given a trial. The judge found me liable because of my tardiness in discovery, and she decided I was covering up things.
It was a summary judgment, finding you guilty of defamation.
Not summary judgment based on anything I did. Summary judgment based on discovery, on my misconduct in discovery. Not that there was evidence that what I said was not true. I was not allowed.
Why were you cooperating in discovery, though?
I was cooperating. I was dealing with thousands and thousands of requests. Those ladies are represented by a Wall Street law firm. The Wall Street law firm has been paid $4 or $5 million. The chief lawyer is a former law partner of Hunter Biden. It's a completely.
But Rudy, so you said you were going to testify and you didn't. So why didn't you testify?
Oh, because she told me if I told the same story that I've been telling, she'd hold me in contempt. And she has put more J6 people in jail for more time than anyone else. She's the chief judge who called in the judges of the district when they were originally doing the J6 cases and said, the sentences aren't high enough. She's bloodthirsty.
All right, so Mayor, it does get to the ultimate issue.
It's ridiculous to have a jury trial in the District of Columbia. 100 J6 people have had jury trials. Not a single person has been acquitted. That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that's the jurisdiction. That's the jurisdiction that the crime happened. I mean, where do you want them to hold it? In Alabama?
The jury, they really are not juries of your peers. They're juries who have made up their minds before they walk into the court.
Okay,
they hear J6, they hear Giuliani say $145 million. These women shouldn't get $145 million. That's ridiculous.
So, Rudy,
and that gets the tape that I would use to defend myself has been doctored. 3 hours have been taken out of a 12-hour tape of the most relevant parts of it.
So that's your claim, but
I know it's my claim.
Yeah,
those are good claims.
Okay, Mayor Giuliani.
I'm not going to give those up.
Last thing, it connects all.
The case should be reversed.
So you say that case was wrong, that judge was wrong, that jury was wrong, all the J6, the judge is wrong, the jury is wrong. 61 times you guys went to court.
I did
Trump
not
and Trump. No, not you.
One time.
Trump and Trump allies went to court 61 times after the election to prove fraud. You guys said it would be easy to prove. You had all the evidence, but in all those cases, there was no evidence presented. So isn't that a massive problem when you say, and I mean, it's a big charge, a giant charge that an American election has been stolen, and then you don't present any evidence. And that includes Trump appointed judges, some of the most conservative judges in the country, and they all said you didn't present any evidence.
I stopped presenting evidence after the first case because I didn't trust the courts.
Come on, Rudy, come on. Doesn't that, to the average person, doesn't that seem a little unbelievable?
No, not if you live in New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta. You think you got an honest court system in New York and Philadelphia? You really do?
But why would you then, why are they?
Any of our judicial system should not be trusted.
I didn't say the whole judicial system. The Democrats were very.
Just whenever you guys go through.
No, they did something very smart. They cheated in corrupt Democrat jurisdictions. They didn't cheat in a neutral place. They cheated in Philadelphia, one of the most corrupt Democratic cities in the country. They cheated in Atlanta, which is probably one of the most corrupt cities ever. Every other mayor.
But Mayor, it's run by Republicans. Georgia, Raffensperger. You've got the Republican governor.
Republican, and Raffensperger has an awful lot of problems of his own, including doctoring my tape, including having gotten 4 days after the election a report telling him about the serious problems in the election, which he concealed until it was discovered on an FOIA request 2.5 years later. He now has 375,000 paper ballots missing. And finally, his pal, the governor, has removed him from the election commission. And
But
the
Rudy, do you
governor
see
has
that
said,
now?
the lieutenant governor has said 3 years too late. Ratzenberger has never conducted a good election for us.
But do you see now, all the Republican politicians in Arizona, in Wisconsin legislature, in Georgia, all the Republican judges appointed by Trump, appointed by Reagan, Bush, etc., all of them rule against you guys.
No.
All of them say that you don't have the evidence.
Wisconsin.
So, and you're saying they're all biased. Why would they all be biased against you?
The Wisconsin court ruled 3-4 against us. 3 of them thought we had a valid case that Trump had won Wisconsin. They were the 3 Republicans. 4 Democrats voted against us. The Pennsylvania court, everyone who voted against us was a Democrat. And do you know the principle they used to vote against us? So we had 700,000 to 800,000 examples of times that ballots were counted without a Republican being allowed to be present. The court said that because they were in the room, even though they could be 100 or 200 yards away, they were present. That's an absurd, intellectually dishonest decision.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Only given by corrupt Democratic judges.
Let me ask you a question.
No, Trump-appointed judges all ruled against you.
Yes.
That was a case in the state court, and they were all Democrats, appointed by Democrats.
Okay,
There are Trump
Not one
judges,
case.
There are Trump. That's the biggest case. We were winning by 800,000 votes when they stopped. How about this?
Rudy.
On election night, we were winning in every state that we eventually lost, all 5.
You know the votes come in later, Rudy. You know that.
All 5 times?
Yeah, because the vote by mail, because you guys chose not to do vote by mail, which was a terrible idea.
You make up 800,000 votes?
Yeah, vote by mail across 330 million people.
I had witnesses, mathematicians willing to testify.
Why didn't you have them
Because they
testify?
wouldn't allow me to.
Okay, I have another question.
Don't you know what the decision was in Philadelphia? I wasn't allowed to have a preliminary hearing. I wasn't allowed to present a witness. I'm going to tell you why. Because the courts didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to get involved in this dirty.
No, but in that case that you were in, the judge asked you, "Do you have any evidence?" And you said no.
I didn't say that. I didn't say no.
You did.
No. This is the press.
We have a direct quote.
You don't understand what happened. Okay. I had to argue a complaint that I was trying to substitute our complaint for that alleged fraud that didn't allege fraud. And he asked me in the complaint that was before him, was there an allegation of fraud? I said no. Now, if you go on, you will hear me say, but we want to substitute a complaint that we've now had time to prepare because our lawyer in that case had to leave because he was threatened with being fired by his law firm, and the judge refused to substitute us. It's just like what they did to me on January 6th. On January 6th, I said we should have trial by combat.
Oh my God.
Oh, terrible, right? Now, if you look at my quote, I said, I would love to have our people and their people have a trial by combat over which machine works, and if their machine actually can't be penetrated by the internet and you can't change the vote, then I'll apologize. And if we can show that their machine does, then they're going to have to go to jail.
But let me just start by saying, hold on.
Let me finish. This is really important because CNN still continues to do this. So Thompson and the J6 committee sued me, Trump Jr. separately. And the judge, who was an Obama appointee in the District of Columbia, wrote an opinion saying that had been horribly taken out of context, that there's nothing that I said that would provoke violence. In fact, the rest of my speech was about legal matters and being peaceful, and that it was not a plausible charge, and dismissed the case. Nobody reports that. The case against me for having anything to do with January 6th, which I had nothing to do with. I didn't even know it happened until after it happened, was thrown out unceremoniously by an Obama judge. Thank God we found one.
Question for you, 2 questions. Let me ask them both and then you can answer them both.
Sure.
And then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, number 1, why did Kenneth Chesebro refer to the fake electors as fake electors in communications about the fake electors?
Because he's stupid.
Okay.
I mean, the fact is they weren't fake electors. They were from my point of view, they were alternate electors. I always saw them, and they were always presented to me as if the state legislature decides in December that the vote should be changed from Biden to Trump, then we have electors that can be substituted for them. If you didn't have electors, if you had named electors by the 14th of December or whatever it was, then you would have had, Biden would have been deprived of those votes, and we wouldn't have gotten them. And this was based on legal research that was done in 1960 when Nixon and Kennedy disputed Hawaii. And Hawaii wasn't decided until December. I picked December 30th because Hawaii was decided on December 30th. And they substituted Kennedy's alternate electors for Nixon's.
Okay.
Had Kennedy not had those electors, that would have been a no vote. And just to get a little more complicated, the majority is based on how many votes. So you would lose a little in terms of mathematics if you didn't have electors ready. That's the reason we did it.
Fine.
Honestly, we're not crooks. I got to tell you that.
Then why did you have fake electors in New Mexico where you guys had no pending litigation arguing that there was election fraud in that state?
I don't know why. We did in New Mexico, because I never thought we had a chance in New Mexico. So I don't know. I can't tell you why.
I mean, you guys didn't go to court about that state.
Why I don't know why. I don't know why we did electors in New Mexico.
Okay, last point of clarification on this.
It doesn't make sense that we did that.
But Rudy, you see that people think it does make sense if you're trying to steal the election. And so that's why, look, when you say that there's alternate electors, but Trump had a slate of electors. So you could use your slate of electors if you actually won the election. Why did you guys go to not your slate of electors, but to fake, or what you would call alternate electors?
Because some of them were the same, some were different because they were gone. They had to re-sign up.
But a lot of them wouldn't sign up because they said this is cheating and stealing the election.
I didn't do the signing up, so I can't, and don't hold me to this, but I think it was about half and half. I think.
So half of your own Trump electors say, this is cheating, we're not going to do this.
But it wasn't cheating. They only would have been electors if they had been selected by the court or by the legislature, which was the more likely possibility. The Constitution of the United States, Section 2, Article 2, Section 2 says the state legislature is in charge of presidential elections. The Supreme Court has said they have plenary power. Even if they delegate their power to the Secretary of State, they can take it back anytime they want, particularly if there's a problem.
I know, but that's the problem. That's what you guys were going to use to steal the election when you didn't actually win. You didn't win the votes. So you're saying, hey, we couldn't even use our own electors because half of them wouldn't go for this scam. So then we went, but we could have gone to the states, and even though we didn't have the votes, so we could have just used our plenary power.
The woman who testified.
That's exactly the problem.
Who testified for me in Detroit, an Indian woman who broke down crying, who said she was trained by the Democratic Party to take phony ballots and attach registrations to it of people that were dead, of people that had moved out.
Did you guys have her testify? And in some of the
she testified before the legislature of Michigan. It's on record.
How about in the 61 cases you guys lost?
Hear the testimony. The judge dismissed it before we could have a preliminary hearing. And I have to tell you, I've practiced law for about 50 years. Never had a judge turn down witnesses. They didn't want to hear the witnesses because the minute those witnesses
why wouldn't Trump appointed judges?
Yeah, even Trump appointed judges didn't want to see the evidence.
The real reason, Rudy, is because they're like, one person is not wide-scale fraud that you guys claim affected 5 different states. And just putting up a rando who says, well, I didn't have a good experience. That's not real evidence. That's
Rudy, what about your legacy, Rudy? Like you cleaned up New York, Rudy.
And I fought the good fight in an election that was completely dishonest. It was a completely dishonest election carried out by a party that specializes in election fraud in New York, in Philadelphia, in Chicago.
You got elected mayor in New York.
And I had first time I got elected, I was faced with 50,000 fraudulent votes. Second time, 20,000. I was able to overcome 20,000. I spent $1 million on voter integrity when I ran for mayor. The only reason I didn't go to court is because you can't win in New York in front of a Democratic judge.
What?
Do you understand that the judges in New York are vassals of the Democratic leader? They're not elected. Judge Enger, he's been elected 3 times. Never had an opponent. Where does that happen?
That happens all over the country.
Yeah, it happens in red states all the time.
It happens when a party has complete control.
Like in red states
And
and in blue
that guy-
states. Yeah.
Well, then I'll go fix the red states. I put about an equal number of Republicans in jail as Democrats. But you're not going to tell me our court system in New York at the state Supreme Court level is honest in political cases. I was taught in law school that you can't contest a political case in a New York City court, because one thing they have to promise to the district leader who appoints them is party case, they go for the party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of them promise a lot more than that, and I put some of them in jail. I mean, I remember I put most of Koch's administration in jail. Taking money for judgeships was a big part of that. The court system in New York is corrupt as hell, and it's run by the 5 district leaders. The guy running that case is a district leader. They used to be, and you guys would be part of it. There used to be a Reform Democratic movement in New York.
Yeah, that's right.
Ed Koch was part of the Reform Democratic movement.
Yeah.
The Liberal Party and the Reform Democratic movement were created to fix the corruption in the court system and in the political system in New York 70 years ago.
Right, but New York's not a swing state. So, Rudy, I appreciate you coming on.
They're in their local elections, they cheat, and they cheat among Democrats.
Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you being a good sport. And
good sport. I think this was a valuable thing to hear your arguments and you hear my arguments.
There you go. That's it's called America.
Gosh almighty, if we could return to that, I think we'd solve so many of these problems.
Rudy Giuliani, everybody, made the case for himself, made the case for Donald Trump. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I really admire the way you handle it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
But I really admire it.
We got more when we come back.